You might have observed this a lot. Two friends walk out of the same college gate holding the same degree with almost identical scores. Yet, their careers begin in completely different directions. One secures a really good package while the other quietly accepts something far lower. For outsiders, the explanation feels obvious. We say one must be more talented or more confident or maybe just luckier. But the truth is far more subtle. There is a difference in how they negotiated their salary. If you think salary is purely on the basis of your skills, then you are wrong, because when a company shortlists you for salary negotiations, by that time they have scanned hundreds of resumes, filtered dozens of candidates, and still chosen you for the final conversation. If you reach that stage, you are already capable. At that point, the real difference comes from how you present yourself when it matters most. Most freshers freeze at this moment. They sit quietly, unsure of what the right answer is. Hi, this is Divya, the placement advisor at Dnyaan Prasad Global University. And many a times, my students come to me with one particular problem, that they do not get their salary that they've expected at their interviews. And most often, this has nothing to do with confidence. In today's video, we will understand how to navigate this moment with confidence. How do you know if a salary is fair when every company structures compensation differently? How do you recognize your own value when you have never seen how salaries are broken down? And how do you make sure your career starts in the right direction when you're entering the most important conversation of your life for the very first time? Let's break down the most important conversation of your career. Most students think negotiation starts when HR asks for expectations, but it actually begins much earlier. It begins the moment you decide to take your internships seriously instead of treating them like certificates. It begins when you build skills that solve real problems rather than stacking online course completions. It begins when your projects show depth, clarity, and an understanding of how things work in the real world. You might be wondering why this matters before negotiation even begins. The reason is simple. When you walk into that interview room, the company already has an impression of you. Your internships show whether you can handle responsibility. Your projects show whether you can think independently. Your skills show whether you can contribute from day one. All of this becomes your silent negotiation power long before you even say a single word about salary. If your preparation is weak, you enter the conversation from a position of doubt. When your preparation is strong, you enter from a position of credibility. This is also where your college environment plays a much bigger role than people realize. A college that takes placement seriously doesn't just bring companies to campus. It prepares you for them. It trains you through mock interviews, resume workshops, and communication practice. It teaches you how to speak like a professional and not a nervous fresher. And when a college invests in your readiness, you naturally walk into negotiations with far more confidence. That's what we do at Dnyaan Prasad Global University. Once your preparation speaks for you and the company is convinced you're the right fit, the next stage looks simple from the outside. HR shares the offer. You hear the number, and for a moment it feels like everything has fallen into place. But this is exactly where most freshers make their first mistake. They celebrate the number without understanding what it actually means. And this happens because no one teaches us how salaries are structured. So when an HR person says, "We are offering you 10 lakhs per annum," your instinct is to assume your monthly income will match that level. But CTC, which is cost to company, is not your salary. It is the total amount the company invests in you, whether it comes to your bank account or not. That 10 lakh offer might look very different when broken down. The fixed salary is usually around 7 or 8 lakhs. The remaining amount often includes a performance bonus you may receive only if certain targets are met, a joining bonus that might be paid after you complete a year, and benefits like insurance and training allowances. And then there are ESOPs, something many freshers misunderstand completely. What are ESOPs? Think of them as small ownership stake the company gives you so your growth aligns with theirs. But these shares don't belong to you immediately. They vest over time, which means you must stay for a specific duration before you can claim them. If the company succeeds, ESOPs can be valuable, but they should never be counted as part of your immediate spendable income. Once deductions like PF, taxes, insurance, and other contributions are applied, your in-hand salary often comes down to 50 or 60,000 rupees a month. Not bad at all, but very different from the headline number everyone discusses. And this is why understanding the breakup is essential. Asking for it does not mean you're negotiating aggressively. It simply means you're making sure you know what you're stepping into. It protects you from disappointment and gives you a realistic picture of your financial life in the first year of your career. Once you understand how an offer is structured, the next step is knowing whether that offer is actually fair. And this is where most freshers unknowingly limit themselves. They hear a number, compare it to what their friends received, and assume that is all the information they need. But negotiation becomes easier the moment you realize that understanding the market is as important as understanding the offer. Today, you have access to more salary data than any generation before you. Platforms like Glassdoor, AmbitionBox, and LinkedIn Salary reveal what companies are paying freshers, how compensation changes across cities, and what specific job titles usually receive. When you explore this, you stop relying on guesswork. You start seeing patterns. You begin to understand what a fair range looks like for the role you are applying for. And then there are your seniors and alumni. They have lived the experience you are preparing for. They know what their in-hand salary looked like, which parts of the CTC were useful and which were only attractive on paper. They know whether the company delivered on its promises and what they wish they had asked during their negotiation. These are insights you will never find in a placement brochure. Even your placement cell holds valuable information. They track what companies offered last year, how compensation differs across departments, and which roles pay higher because they require certain skills. When you combine all this, something changes inside you. Negotiation no longer feels like a risky conversation. It becomes a simple discussion because you are walking with facts, not fear. So, when HR eventually asks, "What are your salary expectations?" you don't freeze, you don't guess. You speak from a place of clarity because you have already done the work that most freshers skip. And now, the final step. Once you're done with your research and you finally sit across from HR, the real test begins. This is the moment most freshers fear, but it becomes far less intimidating when you understand what is actually happening in that conversation. HR is not trying to trap you. They are trying to understand whether you know your value and whether you can communicate it clearly. And that begins with the question almost every candidate dreads. What are your salary expectations? This is where many freshers panic and immediately say anything is fine. But here's the truth. The moment you say those words, you quietly lower your own position. So ask yourself something. If you don't value your time and skills, how can you expect a company to do it for you? Instead, respond with calmness. You can express openness without sounding unsure. Something as simple as saying you trust the company's standard range for the role and are focused on learning and contributing already positions you differently. It tells HR that you've come prepared. And if your research has given you a clear sense of what freshers in similar roles are earning in that city, you can gently mention the range you've seen and say you would be comfortable within that bracket depending on the responsibilities. Then comes the second moment freshers often mishandle, the offer itself. HR shares the number and most candidates immediately accept it out of excitement or fear of losing the opportunity. But how can you decide your future within seconds of hearing a single number? Slow down. Ask for the breakdown of the offer and ask whether the variable pay is guaranteed or performance-based. Ask whether there is a probation period and whether your salary changes during that time. If ESOPs are included, ask how long the vesting period is and what it means for you. These are not bold questions. They are basic questions any responsible professional should ask. And what if the offer feels lower than what the role demands? Maybe the job requires weekend work, client communication, leadership responsibility, or technical depth far beyond an entry role. You're not trying to argue. You're simply trying to understand whether the compensation reflects the expectations. So, you politely ask if there is any flexibility in the fixed component or whether the company revisits compensation after the first performance review. Even if the answer is no, you've established something important, that you evaluate roles thoughtfully instead of rushing. If the number doesn't change, your focus shifts to something far more important than the first month's salary: the growth path. Ask when the first performance review takes place. Ask what KPIs your appraisal will depend on. Ask how compensation typically evolves in the first year for someone in your position. These answers tell you whether the role is a stepping stone or a long-term opportunity. And if you still feel unsure, remember this: you are not required to make a decision on the spot. It is perfectly reasonable to say you want to review the offer and get back the next day. Almost every recruiter will respect that. This is also where managing expectations become important. Not everything in a compensation package can be negotiated. You cannot change standard benefits like insurance, PF, or ESOP structures because these are governed by company policy. But your fixed salary, your probation terms, your review timeline, and your responsibilities are often open for discussion. The key is knowing what is flexible and what isn't, so you don't waste emotional energy on the wrong parts of the conversation. And before you say yes, pause for just a moment and ask yourself 3 simple questions. Will I learn here? Will I earn enough to survive and save? Will this job help me move into something better over the next 12 to 18 months? If 2 answers are yes, the offer is worth considering. If all 3 answers are yes, you're looking at a strong opportunity. If only 1 is yes, it may be a signal to keep exploring. Because your first offer is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of how the world sees you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Honestly, your job doesn't start on the day you join the company. It starts the moment you decide to understand, question, and evaluate what's being offered to you. And now, you know exactly how to do that.